Welcome back to the mental space. Now, if you're a startup, I'm sure you're no stranger to hustle culture. But is that really good for us? And is that actually going to give you the step up you need to succeed? Well, today, my guest on the mental space is no stranger to anyone in Dubai. He's known as the Rebel Networker, and he has helped countless businesses connect, make serious connections that can help take their businesses to the next level. So, Mr. Phil Bedford, who is not my twin, welcome to the mental space.
Pleasure to be here, and at least we're not dressed the same this time.
Like last time.
Last time.
The last time we were at an event, which was held by an organization that likes to help startups. We got into on stage about mental health for startups, and we started talking about the hustle culture. And I know that's something that you passionately feel about because you would have worked with a lot of businesses, particularly in their early days of their journey. Give me your thoughts. Give me your top level thoughts on hustle culture. And good, bad, has its place. What's your thoughts?
Well, first of all, I think I'm showing my age a little bit here because when someone says to me they're hustling, I think of, was it Robert Redford in the...
Yes.
Yes, the hustling.
Yeah, that was a long, long time ago.
Oh dear.
Yeah.
So the word hustle for me it has a negative connotation to start with because that had a negative side.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
So that's how the word stuck with me. I realized that, it's these days it's kind of a cool thing to be hustling. And I think apart from once I've got over the fact that my perception of the word is different, you've got to ask yourself, what is hustling?
Yeah.
And how does it show up? As an entrepreneur, most people, and again, you can start an entrepreneurship in different ways. Some people start a business and they're lucky, they have loads of money and they can then spend loads of money, they can get staff. And so they don't need to hustle maybe as much because they have resources. The majority of people, I think, when they start their small business, they're probably sourcing it out of their own pocket.
Yeah.
So they tend to be time rich, money poor. Mm-hmm. And when you're money poor, time rich, you do more with your time. And so then what happens? You end up chasing clients, chasing this, chasing that. I think that's where hustle really comes from. And the belief that you do work weekends, you do work late night. It's almost like it's a badge of honor.
Yeah, we do tend to glorify it these days. And what's interesting, and the more I look into the research and look into the statistics around sort of mental health in general in the world of work, but then we look at entrepreneurs, like the figures tell us that 90%, 9 out of every 10 startups are going to fail. That's what the statistics are. And that's with us glorifying hustle culture. When we break down into the impact of hustle culture, I guess the question I'll ask you at the top of this podcast is, do you know what? If we took a step back from hustle culture and had a look at, and broke it down to its component parts, would we actually increase that ratio of 9 out of 10 if we started looking after ourselves a bit better as startups?
Yeah, I think in many ways the knock-on effect of not hustling is we look after ourselves. I think if we take a step back and people are looking at the big picture, maybe they get a bit confused. But if you can actually break it down and say to myself, well, we know we have to work hard, but what is smart work?
Yeah.
Smart work is hard work at the right time instead of just blatantly just working hard. So I think it's doing things like breaking down, what am I actually doing with my time? What can I take away that I shouldn't be doing? Because ultimately in business, there's only two activities: making money, losing. And the majority of small business owners are doing losing money activities. And when you're doing enough of that, you haven't got any time.
And it's difficult to know where to start, isn't it? Or indeed, actually, probably more accurately, it's difficult to know where to stop. And I've been on this journey since, for less than a year. And to be able to take that step back, because when you get into it, there's so much to do. You're setting up your business, you get your business bank account, which can be easy or hard. You get your trade license, you're getting going. So what are you doing with your networking? What are you doing with your marketing? What's the content? What's the business? Are you servicing clients? Are you chasing sales? So it can be difficult to know sort of where to stop. What of all of that should I be doing? So if you sit down with a startup and you look at all those different activities that we all start naturally pursue, and I don't think anyone can be blamed for going, right, well, I'm going to do all of this. And often we get trapped in this thing, we're going to save a bit of money, but I'll do this myself. But what's the cost of I'll do this myself?
Well, So there you have a balance of what's it going to cost me to outsource it. So let's say outsourcing your admin.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of people when they start, they do their own accounts, they do admin for a number of reasons, or they can't afford to outsource it. But there's a point where it actually costs you more in terms of money to do it yourself. And that's your cost as a business owner,
Yeah.
right? What is it costing you to sit there for an hour in terms of lost acquisition? And then there's the point where it's worth outsourcing it, paying something to free yourself up. So number one is outsourcing the things maybe that you're good at.
Yeah.
You know, we all know a whiz on a computer. We can sit there for hours and do this and struggle, or we can give it to probably a 6-year-old kid and just go sort that out. And they go, done, mummy.
Particularly with ChatGPT these days.
Yeah. But I mean, that's another great tool. But I mean, at the end of the day, there's things you can do yourself, but if you're smart, you can save time. And one of the things I challenge anybody not to look at their day and just say, right, do I really need to be doing that? Or is there a way I could arrange that so someone else uses their time and their effort to save me from doing it? And if you can save an hour a day, 5 hours a week, that's not far off a working day.
Yeah.
What could you do with an extra working day a week?
Or take a day off. Yeah. Now, but then we get into, and I honestly, I've been guilty of this, that, time management when you're a startup seems like almost like sometimes it's something we don't have time for, planning your day. And, you've educated me on using things like calendar apps so that actually every hour of the day is tracked. And I've got better at that, but it is a thing where time management and just, I've got no time to actually do the time management. I've got no time to sit down and then plan out all the different tasks of this day, this week. That seems to be a flaw in our thinking. And actually, it's well worth making the time to do that time management.
Yeah, I mean, I'll never forget a lady many years ago. Actually, she had a company that taught time management.
Right.
And she was telling me the story how a guy didn't have time to book her services, which I thought was hilarious. But I mean, it is. I mean, you've got to find the time. But it's number one, it's the motivation. I think you need to revisit. Am I just doing this because it's cool, without thinking of the implications? But I think you have to be able to motivate yourself to say this isn't sustainable, or not even that. Am I actually shooting myself in the foot because I'm not being organized enough? And so I don't know if it's the same around the world, but here I think you see a lot of the tail chasing the dog.
Explain that more.
Well, you should be the dog wagging the tail, right? But here it's the tail wagging the dog. So what happens is people aren't in charge of calendars. So yeah, I'll give you an example, right? If I say to you, okay, Scott, let's have a chat. And you say, fantastic. And you look in your diary and you say, Phil, can you come and visit me in jail too? Right? A little bit different here because we're doing a podcast. I had to do it. So I didn't have any choice.
Sorry.
But I live at the other end of Dubai. Right? Yeah. So that's 3/4 of an hour drive. Right? 3/4 an hour here, 3/4 of an hour back. Finding parking, 10 hours. Only joking. I was lucky today. But you said to me, come here. All right. So I've spent that time driving.
Absolutely.
Right. Now I'm going to drive back. That's 2 hours. Right. That's 2 hours you haven't had to waste, but I have. So
I get the logic.
You're with
me,
right?
Yeah.
So what I'm saying to people is whenever you have a meeting, be the person who suggests where and when that meeting is based on what's good for your calendar. Because if you leave it to them, they can decide what's best for their calendar.
Absolutely.
And then you end up driving time. So it's a simple task of just calendarization, but making sure you're in charge of the calendar, not other people.
That's interesting.
You start applying that to other areas of your business. Suddenly there's other people wasting their time. You've got all this time left.
Now, if we go back to just, again, the kind of like hustle culture, to break it down, because there will be some prominent business entrepreneurs who have been very successful, and they will tell you, you absolutely have to hustle. You can never stop. It's got to be 7 days a week. You've got to live and breathe it, and you are going to have to sacrifice everything else. I know a couple of them, and they have undoubtedly been very successful, but it has come at a cost to their mental health. And I have, other people in my network who it's come at a cost to their family. There is, however, it seems to me there's a distinction between hustle culture and working hard, because working hard, or as you say, working smart, is allowed. It is, we need to do that. You're not going to get there without putting effort in. But do we really need to hustle?
I mean, it's also like hustle smart then, isn't it?
Right.
If you want to stay cool with it. hustle smart. So
Dressed as you are, you're going to have a better relationship with cool than I am. However,
yeah,
yeah,
but hustle smart. One of the things I've always loved working for myself is, I ruthlessly keep my time to myself at the weekend.
yeah,
I can't believe how many people on a Saturday morning are messaging you to do work things at 10 a.m. on a Saturday morning. I'm sitting there going, you're not organized in your week to do that before the weekends.
yeah.
So what you've done is induce stressing yourself, spoil your own time, and also disturb my weekend. And that's probably happening all over. So I think a lot of it comes down to organizing your time,
Yeah.
planning so you know things that, what to do. But hustle smart then. And most hustle, I think, comes from the fact that people just aren't planning their time.
So they're always chasing because they're not in control of the calendar.
Chasing.
Yeah. Absolutely, absolutely. No, I get that. This perspective, about hustle culture. You have been around in industry and working with businesses for a while.
I was going to say,
For a while.
I'm going to say a long time.
Well, no, I was going to say for a while. You, like me, are experienced. Is this a view that you've always had, or is this a view that you've formed having made mistakes along the way? And what were those mistakes and what did they teach you?
I think, to be fair, I've always been pretty time efficient. And I have to put it down to my time at university. I studied civil engineering.
Okay.
And I lived in a house with other engineers. And if anyone here's been to university, we all know that a lot of people at university work for about 2 hours a week on the uni, and the rest of the time they're partying.
Yeah.
Whereas engineers, we were studying for 8 hours a week. So what we learned pretty much straight away was to network. We would share tasks amongst the house. Find the guy that's good at maths. Find the guy that's good at structures. Find the guy that's good at geology. You'd all go away and do your thing, bring it back together, and go. I suppose maybe that could be called cheating, but at the end of the day, what you did was leverage your network.
Yeah.
You still did the work, but the donkey work was taken care of. And what that helped me realize right from the beginning is you can leverage time. You don't need to be doing it all yourself.
Interesting. I'm trying to picture that house right now. I've only got like
It wasn't a lot.
I've got a Big Bang Theory in my head, but let's not go there. Yeah, but over the course of those years, there will have been some mistakes, I'm sure, or maybe not. No, never put a foot wrong. But there's an interesting thing around blame culture, in that startups are just going to run. They are going to make mistakes, or they are going to miss opportunities. Is that okay?
I think mistakes, as long as we learn from them, right? I was a little bit lucky, I have to say, because when I was employed, I started my business on the side.
Okay.
So my first experience of marketing and running it was while I had a job.
Yeah.
Which I think is a good way of starting your own business. So I learned a lot of the things I needed to while I had that umbrella, so to speak.
Yeah.
Then when I went on my own, actually full-time on my own, I was part of a franchise. So being part of a franchise, I'd immediately plugged into a load of people who made the mistakes, a load of people that could advise me, a load of people that said, don't do this, do that. And ultimately, whether you're in a franchise or not, that's the advantage of building a network around you. And if you're humble enough to listen to the mistakes other people have made, you don't make them. But so many people are either not humble enough or don't have the network. So guess what, buddy? You make the mistake.
Because that's an interesting one as well. Like, I mean, there are people out there, who either have to raise money or have to leave their jobs to go and pursue that dream. But if you can actually build that as you've done, is that something you recommend to startups these days? Going, look, you don't have to just burn all your bridges and leap off the cliff. If you have the opportunity to kind of at least do some of the legwork while you've got that, because I know like the costs of being an entrepreneur, all of a sudden, like you're on the lam for all of your health insurance, and you got your trade license, and you've got this. So there are costs that perhaps we don't calculate or we don't think about, because we always think, oh yeah, we've got all this covered, but there's going to be things we miss.
There's always something you don't know, right? There's always a problem coming. So I often think building a network is about solving problems that you haven't had yet. So if you've got the right people around you, you now have the resources for when that problem turns up. Because when a problem hits you, it hits you. And then you're in panic or saving mode or firefighting, whatever. Yeah. If you've already built those resources that you can just pick up a phone and go, right, problem's here. And you've got it sorted, that's going to going to help you. And I think it's having the foresight to do that. But look, not everyone invests the time in that because it's not important now. And because it's not important now, they don't see the point.
Yeah.
I think it's one of the challenges a lot of people coming from corporate life get. I'm working with a couple of CEOs at the moment who are now running their own businesses, and they come from very senior positions in this region. And when they were in the corporate, they said jump, everyone said how high, which planet kind of thing.
Absolutely.
And when they left, their immediate lesson has been, oh my gosh, it wasn't my network. It was my position's network.
Indeed. The title behind it gives you that backup and that credibility.
Now they're having to build a completely different network to solve problems that they didn't have in their old role.
Yeah. I mean, obviously in mental, we talk about the mental health, and I just want to take a step back to hustle culture as well. I mean, I consulted just because obviously I'm an advocate. So I am always going to be a bit of a, you could accuse me of being a bleeding heart liberal in this space, but I genuinely believe in the ROI of looking after your mental health so you can all thrive. Companies should embrace this, organizations should embrace this, but we, even as individuals in startups particularly, should be embracing this. So I consulted ChatGPT for and basically asked it, what is hustle culture good for startups? And he came back and its first answer was, hustle culture isn't good for startups because we get that's when you run that risk of burnout. Now, look, we are seeing statistics that it doesn't matter whether it's Cigna and their 360 research that they do every year. We've seen the Bupa research. We've seen McKinsey research that says that 66% of people across the UAE, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and Kuwait are struggling with their mental health. And then we break down burnout. Burnout is not good for an entrepreneur, for a startup, because when you start suffering burnout, you're losing creativity. You're losing energy levels, and it's really impactful. What do you do to look after your health? Is it time management, or is there more? How do you look after Phil as a solopreneur, as a business person? What do you do to kind of avoid that burnout and avoid that hustle culture?
So for me, it's I do work smart. I ask I do it, like I was saying, with the calendar. Number one, I control my calendar. I get other people to other people burn their miles. Other people do this. So number one, I do.
Yeah.
So I'm immediately not in driving up shades.
Yeah.
With all the stress.
Which is a lot of fun.
All that.
Yeah.
Which is fun if you like driving, but in the day, but you know what I'm saying, right? And the other thing is, I eat very well, in terms of, I believe what you put in your body is so important. So, green vegetable juice every day, watch the refined sugars, all that sort of stuff. You wouldn't think that at the moment. And I exercise.
I feel you. I hear you.
Then I exercise. So I think if you look after your body, then your body will serve you better. And if you're not, then that just adds challenges you don't need.
Does that come back to as well then, that kind of personal time management? And I've got a friend back in the UK, James Morgan, who talks about using your calendar smartly, but actually having non-negotiable time for you.
Yeah, and you can do that. I mean, that's the great thing about an entrepreneur. You can do it. You can have your downtime when everything else is down. So you don't have to wait till the evening when everyone else is doing it, because that's when they finish work. You could do it in the quieter time. Or if you're really busy, and things are really, really tough, well, instead of getting the lift, walk up the stairs. I think if you can build it into your calendar, there's less time for exercise.
I was talking to a CEO the other day, very smart guy, James Lafferty, who's the CEO of Fine Hygienic, and he's been the CEO of Coca-Cola, he's been the CEO of Procter & Gamble, and he said that, he books his workouts 6 months in advance, sits down in his calendar and books them in 6 months in advance. So then everything else has to fall in around that. So he is always looking after the kind of, because this is our main manufacturing plant as an entrepreneur.
It's like the old, I'm sure you've covered it a few times over the years. It's like the old on the airplane, isn't it? Looking after the airbags.
Fit your own oxygen mask first.
Fit your own oxygen mask.
Yeah.
It's not your kids.
Yeah.
Because if you can't look after yourself, you can't show up for.
Yeah.
I think that one of the challenges we got, you were talking a minute ago about, the mental health and all that with regards to, hustle and all that. And I can imagine a small business owner going, well, look, I'll worry about my mental health when I know I'm earning enough money so I can live.
Yeah.
So let me just work hard now.
Yeah.
as hard as I possibly can. And if I have a problem later on, well, I'll deal with it then. And I think that's the challenge you've got. So it's almost like you have to deal with this, not from a perspective of worrying about your mental health necessarily, more from a perspective of you could probably be more successful quicker if you're smarter with your time. And the result would be you'd be looking after yourself.
Yeah.
Just a thought.
Do we have to approach this from a different way as well? Because, I mean, it's interesting. We're talking today on International Happiness Day. And one of the people that's been speaking to Mental today is a lady called Mimi Nicklin. And she talks about balance rather than everyone who tells you that you can have it all, even through time management, you can have it all, you can do everything. She would advocate that is lying to you and that everything needs to come down to making choices. So if I choose to do this, then there is something else that I need to choose that I'm not going to do. For you, that breaks down to, okay, well, to start with, we can be more efficient about that because what am I doing that I don't need to do? But that whole idea that I know I can do everything, it's actually, no, it needs to be transactional. And what's your thoughts on that? That actually I need to make smart decisions about what I'm going to do with my time. And these are the 4 things that are important, as opposed to there are 10 things I need to do and I'm going to try and do all of them.
Yeah. And also, yeah, I know everything to say, but it's also, is it possible that you can do all of them? But it's about the order you do it. So what I mean by this is if you
That begins to sound like that old, I'm playing all the right notes, just not necessarily the right order.
You heard me play the trumpet as a kid. So this is the way I was trying to explain to people. I did project management, luckily enough, did my structures. Yeah. And I call it turkey project management. So let's imagine for 1 minute that you're, I don't know if you've ever made a Sunday lunch or a Christmas.
Once, and the results weren't perfect. Yeah.
So here's the thing, right? So if I go, let's just imagine now, I've got the potatoes, got the carrots, you got the sauce, got the turkey. So let's imagine, right? Me and you are going to, this could be, but you and I decide to start making next Sunday's dinner. Right?
Again, this feels like a Morecambe and Wise sketch, but it's like millennials, Gen Zs, Morecambe and Wise. They were very funny. They're on YouTube. Look them up.
So you and I start, right? So first of all, we cook the carrots, then we cook the broccoli, then we start maybe doing the potato, and then half an hour before everyone comes, we stick the turkey in the oven. What happens?
Well, they're waiting a while before for their turkey.
Yeah, basically, the turkey cooks like 6 hours later. Right?
Yeah.
Meanwhile, all your veg is overcooked.
Yeah.
Or cold. Right? Yeah. So what do? We start with the turkey. Then you start with the next longest thing. And by the way, if you need to, you can pop out and get your shopping while the turkey's in the oven. You can do other stuff because the turkey's cooking. Right? Then you do the next thing. So if you do a task that can work away in the background while you're doing other stuff, suddenly you can do more jobs. But instead, a lot of people I see tend to just be, oh, there's something I have to do. And they'll go and do it.
Reactionary.
They're reacting to it. They're not thinking, right, what can be working away in the background while I do this other stuff? And that luckily came from doing my project management. But it got me to think about every task.
So you'll speak. I mean, I'm kind of going to distill some of this down into like takeaways for businesses listening in or entrepreneurs listening in. You obviously have dealt with a lot of business people. What are the 5 things they get wrong? And what are the 5 things they get right from your perspective? So from when you were sitting down with them, top 5, top 3, give me like the classic mistakes you see over it. And I'm guessing that time management is going to be one of them.
Okay, so it's probably and again, this is just my opinion. Number 1, calendarization.
Yeah.
They're reactive instead of proactive. Definitely. Some people will grab at any chance they get and just drive off. So guy said he'll speak to me in Russell Cameron, a possible business opportunity. We jump in his car and you go. 2 hours there, they cancel everything here because it's a possible business opportunity. Yeah. It all falls apart and they've lost all the opportunities here, the people they should have met. So I think also there's staying true and committing to your calendar. So if you book something in, work around that, plan around that, be in charge of your calendar and try and keep as much in your calendar as you can. But unfortunately, what people will do, not just being in charge of the calendar, they'll just ditch anything at the chance of a bit of money. So it's sticking to your plan, managing your calendar, doing money-making tasks as opposed to losing money tasks, delegating or outsourcing as soon as possible, working in your flame, not your wax. Oh, so knowing what you're good at.
Flame at wax.
Outsource the wax activities. You know what I mean?
Okay.
So for me, it's anything to do with accounting. Can I do it? Yes. Do I like it? No.
So they're your wax activities.
Yeah. Finding other people. And the big one is investing in relationships. Build the roof before it rains.
Now, explain that one a little bit. Expand on me for that. Build the roof before it.
Always be clear. Every single person you meet, you could be adding to the quality of their life and them to you. And it may not be now, but it may be in a year or so's time. So try and leave every relationship, every person you meet.
That's a good sentiment on international happiness.
Absolutely. And you only get that if you're listening to them.
Now, another thing we often, we talk about loneliness at the top, but actually being an entrepreneur, particularly, if you were a solo, it can be incredibly lonely because you've got all this responsibility for your business and you're so busy. And we know, and again, we were fortunate enough on this podcast to speak to Dr. Rangan Chatterjee back in the UK, who was talking about loneliness being the equivalent of smoking 15 cigarettes a day. It would actually take 10 years off your life. And when you're lonely, your body knows that you are alone. You knows you're exposed and you're vulnerable. You are the rebel network, but actually you talk about yourself being quite a shy guy, quite an introvert. But how important has networking been in tackling, and how important can network be in supporting and just removing that sense of loneliness? Because it can be really, really lonely and daunting when you're starting out.
And you can be completely alone, surrounded by people.
Yeah.
And it's again, I am an introvert. I like to say it's situational extrovert. I can get on a stage and jump around if I have to, and I can enjoy it. But I'm quite happy not to do that and stay hidden in the corner. So I do actually get my energy on my own as much. So so my wife, for example, is super friendly. Everybody really likes her, and I'm really envious. I wish I had that skill.
Well, at least she likes you.
Well, she does, I think. But
we're being recorded. This is live, so.
But I'm working. I have to work on it. Yeah. I've got one of those faces that just looks like I'm in pain when I'm thinking. People think there's something wrong with me. If I'm in a classroom, they look at me.
Resting pain face.
And it's just my thinking face. So,
I am smiling.
So, but no, I think, and again, I think if you may not be a natural networker, but if you approach networking as in strangers are just friends I have, or from how can I add value, or just starting, and you can lock away in your mind the good that person has. Then one day when you have a relationship, you can tap in. They're there, but you've got to be investing in relationships. It's the bank of. So if I'm doing lots of things for you, making you feel good, helping you, then one day when I need help, you're like, oh, thanks for asking, Phil. I absolutely find balance.
Yeah.
But if all we're ever doing is taking from relationships or not investing in them, when we need help, they don't show up.
Good karma, bad karma. I'm a sort of believer in that. I mean, Phil, look, I could talk to you all day. It's been an amazing conversation. I hope our audience has found it useful. And if you're out there and you've enjoyed this podcast, then obviously please reach out to Phil Bedford. If you've enjoyed this conversation, please subscribe, whether it's on YouTube or the podcast platform of choice, and we'll welcome you back to more conversations soon on the mental space. Thank you.